Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarane Trinadapi Sunichena Taradivasihishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Harer Nama Harer Nama Harer Nama Kevalam Kalau Nastyeva 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 Gatiranyata. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adigor Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adigor Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adigor Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana. Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana. Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Rama Sri Madhusudana. Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Krishna 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 Hey. Krishna 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 Hey. Krishna 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 Rakshama. Krishna 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 Pahimam. Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam. Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam. Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam. Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajacacharya Ashtotter Satta Srimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Cologne Krishna Book Group. All glories to the Cologne Krishna Book Club. May Krishna bless you and protect you. Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So when we left off last week, what we heard is that Nanda Maharaj and all the residents of Vrindavan finally left Mathura after some time and returned to Vrindavan. And we heard the very nice explanation of Krishna's bhava expansion, meaning that although Krishna was not quote-unquote physically present in Vrindavan, Krishna was actually there in Vrindavan because all the residents of Vrindavan could only remember and think of Krishna 24 hours a day. And it was explained that remembering Krishna and thus visualizing Krishna, especially for the residents of Vrindavan, because they experienced so many personal pastimes with Krishna, that vivid remembrance, they were actually seeing Krishna, and that seeing Krishna is as good as being in Krishna's quote-unquote physical presence. And we also learned how this method of Vipralamba Seva, or Lila Smarana, remembering Krishna in intense mood of separation and love, is considered by Lord Chaitanya and his followers to be the highest spiritual transcendental ecstasy, more ecstatic than actually quote-unquote physical presence with Krishna. And of course, that is, practically speaking, impossible for us to understand because we are still on the dualistic material platform. And so it is difficult for us to comprehend the absolute platform, where remembrance of something is as good as that thing. And then we also learned that Uddhava came to visit Krishna, and Krishna sent Uddhava with a message for the residents of Vrindavan, especially a message for Radharani and the gopis, which is what we're going to study today. Last week, we heard how Uddhava consoled Nanda and Yashoda. We learned that Nanda Maharaj questioned Uddhava, asking him, "So it has been some time since Krishna has returned. He has not returned. Does Krishna still remember his mother and father? Does Krishna even mention us?" And so Uddhava tried to console Nanda and Yashoda by giving them transcendental spiritual philosophy, trying to impress upon them that actually Uddhava said that Nanda and Yashoda and all the residents of Vrindavan are on such a high level of devotion to Krishna that Uddhava accepted that they were more advanced. And Uddhava tried to explain to them philosophically how actually there is no separation because Krishna is all-pervasive and localized. Krishna is all-pervasive by means of his energy. Krishna's energy is everywhere. Either it's material or spiritual, but both of them come from Krishna. And therefore, whether you're dealing with the material energy or the spiritual energy, you're never out of Krishna. The very definition of Maya means that one thinks there's some existence separate and apart from Krishna. But Uddhava explained to them that is impossible. Nothing is separate from Krishna. And Uddhava also explained to them that Krishna is also localized because he is within everyone's heart. So Krishna is both all-pervasive and he's at the same time localized. So after Uddhava gave cogent instructions to Nanda and Yashoda, Krishna now will meet the gopis. So this is where we pick up. Nanda and Uddhava thus passed the whole night discussing Krishna. In the morning, the gopis prepared for morning arati by lighting their lamps and sprinkling butter mixed with yogurt. After finishing Mangala Arati, the gopis engaged themselves in churning butter out of yogurt. And while the gopis were thus engaged, the lamps reflected on their ornaments, making the ornaments still more bright. Their churning rods, their arms, their earrings, their bangles, their breasts, everything moved, and the kumkum powder gave their faces a saffron luster comparable to the rising sun. While making various sounds by their churning, they also sang the glories of Krishna, and the two sound vibrations mixed together, ascending to the sky, sanctifying the whole atmosphere. After sunrise, the gopis came as usual to offer their respects to Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Devi. But when they saw the golden chariot of Uddhava at the door, they then began to inquire amongst themselves, "What is this chariot? To whom does it belong?" Some of the gopis inquired whether Akrura, who had previously taken away Krishna, had now returned. They were not very pleased with Akrura because, being engaged in the service of Kamsa, Akrura had taken lotus-eyed Krishna away to the city of Mathura, and Krishna has yet to return. So all the gopis conjectured that maybe Akrura might have come again to fulfill another cruel plan. The gopis thought, "Well, anyway, we are now dead bodies without our Supreme Master Krishna. So what further act can Akrura perpetrate against these dead bodies?" And while they were talking in this way, Uddhava finished his morning ablutions, prayers, and chanting, and came before the gopis. "Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare." Are you ready for the next episode? Let me see. Okay, let's go on to the next episode. This one is entitled, "The Gopis Accuse Krishna." When the gopis saw Uddhava, they observed that his features almost exactly remembered those of Krishna, and so they could understand that Uddhava must have been a great devotee of Krishna. Uddhava's arms were very long, and his eyes were just like the petals of the lotus flower. Uddhava was dressed in yellow garments and wore a garland of lotus flowers. Uddhava's face was very beautiful. Having achieved the liberation of Sarupya, and thus having the same bodily features as the Lord, Uddhava looked almost like Krishna. In Krishna's absence, the gopis had been coming dutifully to visit Mother Yashoda's house early in the morning. They knew that Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda were always grief-stricken, and so the gopis had made it their first duty to come and pay their respects to these two most exalted personalities of Vrindavan. By seeing the friends of Krishna, Nanda and Yashoda would remember Krishna more vividly, and they would thus be satisfied. And also the gopis would be pleased by seeing Nanda and Yashoda. When the gopis saw that Uddhava was representing Krishna even in his bodily features, they thought Uddhava must be a soul completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The gopis then began to contemplate. Who is this who looks just like Krishna? Why, he has the same eyes like lotus petal, the same raised nose and beautiful face, and he is smiling in the same way. In all respects, he resembles Krishna, Shyama Sundara, the beautiful blackish boy. Why, he is even dressed exactly like Krishna. So where has he come from? Who is the fortunate girl who has him for her husband? Thus, the gopis talked among themselves. They were indeed very anxious to know about him. And because they were simple, unsophisticated village girls, they surrounded Uddhava. And when the gopis understood that Uddhava had a special message for them from Krishna, they then became very happy. And so they called Uddhava to a secluded place, offering him a nice sitting place. They wanted to talk with Uddhava very freely and did not want to be embarrassed before unknown persons. They thus welcomed Uddhava with polite words, and in great submissiveness they spoke. We know that you are a most confidential associate of Krishna, and that he has therefore sent you to Vrindavan to solace his mother and father. We can understand that family affection is very strong, for even great sages who have taken to the renounced order of life cannot easily give up family affection %, for sometimes they even think of their family members. So Krishna has therefore sent you to his father and mother. Otherwise, Krishna has no further business in Vrindavan. Krishna now lives in a town. So what does Krishna have to know about Vrindavan village or the cows' pasturing grounds? These are not at all useful for Krishna now, because Krishna is a man of the city. Surely Krishna has nothing to do with persons who do not happen to be his family members. Friendships with those outside the family continue as long as there is some selfish interest in them. Otherwise, why should one bother about those outside the family? Specifically, a person attached to the wives of others is interested in them only as long as there is a need of sense gratification. Just like the bumblebees, who have interest in the flowers as long as they want to take honey out of them. It is psychologically very natural that a prostitute does not care for her paramour as soon as he loses his money. Similarly, when the citizens find that a government is incapable of giving them full protection, they leave the country. A student, after finishing his education, gives up his relationship with the teacher and the school. A priest, after taking his reward from the worshipper, gives him up. When the fruit season is over, birds are no longer interested in the tree. And just after eating in the house of a host, the guest gives up his relationship with him. After a forest fire, when there is a scarcity of green grass, deer and other animals give up the forest. And so also a man, after enjoying his girlfriend, gives up his connection with her. In this way, all the gopis indirectly accuse Krishna by citing many analogies. Uddhava understood that the gopis of Vrindavan were all simply absorbed in the thought of Krishna and Krishna's childhood activities. And while talking about Krishna with Uddhava, the gopis forgot all about their household business. They even forgot about themselves as their interest in Krishna increased more and more. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Are you ready to continue? All right. So this next episode is actually 2 more episodes. These next 2 episodes are considered to be 2 of the most intimate, highly philosophical, confidential sections of the Bhagavatam. So you want to pay strict attention because we're going to a very, very high philosophical plane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this section is called The Song of the Bumblebee. One of the gopis, namely Srimati Radharani, was so much absorbed in thoughts of Krishna by dint of her personal touch with Krishna that she actually began to talk with a bumblebee which was flying there, trying to touch her lotus feet. While the other gopis were talking with Krishna's messenger, Uddhava, Srimati Radharani took that bumblebee to be a messenger from Krishna. And so she began to talk with the bumblebee as follows. Bumblebee, you are accustomed to drinking honey from flower to flower, and therefore you have preferred to be a messenger of Krishna, who is of the same nature as you. Why, I can see on your mustache the red powder of kumkum, which was smeared on the flower garland of Krishna, while it was pressed against the breasts of some other girl who is my competitor. Oh, You must feel very proud because of having touched that garland, and your mustache has become reddish. You must have come here carrying a message for me, and you were anxious to touch my feet. But my dear Bumblebee, let me warn you, do not touch me. I do not want any messages from your unreliable Master Krishna, for you are the unreliable servant of an unreliable master. Prabhupada will now explain to us the meaning of these words. It may be that Srimati Radharani purposely addressed the bumblebee sarcastically in order to indirectly criticize the messenger Uddhava. And like the other gopis, Srimati Radharani saw that Uddhava's bodily features resembled Krishna's. But she also saw Uddhava as being equal to Krishna. Indirectly, therefore, Radha indicated that Uddhava was as unreliable as Krishna himself. Srimati Radharani wanted to give specific reasons why she was dissatisfied with Krishna and his messenger. Radha continued to address the bumblebee. My dear bumblebee, your master Krishna is exactly of your quality. You sit down on the flower, and after taking a little honey, you immediately fly away and sit in another flower and taste that one. So you are just like your master Krishna. Only once did Krishna give me the chance to taste the touch of his lips. And then Krishna left us all together. I know also that the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, who is always in the midst of lotus flowers, is constantly engaged in Krishna's service. But I do not know how Lakshmiji has become so captivated by Krishna and why she is so much attached to Krishna, although she knows his actual character. Maybe Lakshmiji is so much captivated by Krishna's sweet words that she is unable to understand Krishna's real character. But as far as we, the gopis, are concerned, we are more intelligent than the goddess of fortune. For we are not going to be cheated anymore by Krishna or any of his messengers. Prabhupada now explains this statement. According to expert Vaishnava opinion, Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, is a subordinate expansion of Srimati Radharani. Just as Krishna has numerous expansions of Vishnu Murti, so Krishna's pleasure potency Radharani also has innumerable expansions of goddesses of fortune. Therefore, the goddess of fortune Lakshmiji is always anxious to be elevated to the position of the gopis. Srimati Radharani then continued to address the bumblebee. You foolish bumblebee, you are trying to satisfy me and get a reward by singing the glories of Krishna, but it is a useless attempt. We gopis are bereft of all of our possessions. We are away from our homes and families, and we know very well about Krishna. We know even more than you. So whatever you make up about Krishna will be old stories to us. For Krishna is now in the city and is better known as the friend of Arjuna. And Krishna has many new girlfriends who are no doubt very happy in Krishna's association. Because the lusty burning sensation of their breasts has been satisfied by Krishna, now they are happy. So perhaps if you go there and glorify Krishna, they may be pleased to reward you. You are simply trying to pacify me by your behavior as a flatterer, and therefore you have put your head under my feet. But I know the trick you are trying to play. I know that you are a messenger coming from even a greater trickster, Krishna. Therefore, O bumblebee, please leave me. I can understand that you are expert in reuniting two opposing parties. But at the same time, you must know that I cannot place my reliance upon you nor upon your master Krishna. We left our husbands, children, and relatives only for Krishna. Yet, Krishna did not feel any obligation in exchange. And at last, Krishna left us forlorn. So do you think we can place our faith in Krishna ever again? We know that Krishna cannot live for a moment without the association of young girls, for that is Krishna's nature. Krishna must be finding difficulty in Mathura because Krishna is no longer in the village among innocent cowherder girls. Krishna is now in aristocratic society and must be feeling difficulty in making friendships with other young girls. Perhaps you have come here to canvass again or even to take us there. But why should Krishna expect us to go there? Krishna is indeed greatly qualified to entice all other girls, not only in Vrindavan or Mathura, but all over the universe. Krishna's wonderfully enchanting smile is so attractive, and the movements of Krishna's eyebrows are so beautiful that Krishna can call for any woman from the heavenly, middle, or plutonic planets. Even Mahalakshmi, the greatest of all goddesses of fortune, hankers to render Krishna some service. In comparison to all these women of the universe, what are we? We are very insignificant. Krishna advertises himself as magnanimous, and Krishna is praised by great saints. But actually, Krishna's qualifications would be perfectly utilized if Krishna would only show us some little mercy, for we are much downtrodden and neglected by Krishna. Oh, you poor messenger, you are only a less intelligent servant. You do not know much about Krishna, how ungrateful and hard-hearted Krishna has been, not only in this life, but in his previous lives also. Yes, we have all heard this from our grandmother, Paunamasi, and she has informed us that Krishna was born in a Kshatriya family previous to this birth, and Krishna was known as Ramachandra. In that birth, instead of killing Vali an enemy of his friend Sugriva in the proper manner of a Kshatriya, Ram killed Bali just like a hunter. For the hunter takes a secure hiding place and then kills the animal without even facing it. So Lord Ramachandra, as a Kshatriya, should have fought with Bali face to face. But being instigated by Sugriva, Ram killed Bali from behind a tree. Thus Ram deviated from the religious principles of a Kshatriya. And also, Ram was so attracted by the beauty of Sita that Ram converted Shurparnika, the sister of Ravana, into an ugly woman by cutting off her nose and ears. Shurparnika proposed an intimate relationship with Ram, and as a Kshatriya, Ram should have satisfied Shurparnika. But Ram was so henpecked that Ram could not forget Sita Devi and converted Shurparnika into an ugly woman. And before that birth as a Kshatriya, Krishna took birth as a Brahmana boy known as Vamana Dev and asked charity from Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj was so magnanimous that Bali gave Vamana whatever he had. And yet Krishna as Vamana Dev ungratefully arrested Bali just like a crow and pushed him down to the Patala kingdom. So we know all about Krishna and how ungrateful Krishna is. But here is the difficulty. In spite of Krishna's being so cruel and hard-hearted, it is very difficult for us to give up talking about Krishna. And it is not only we who are ungrateful. It is not only we who are unable to give up this talk, but even great sages and saintly persons also engage in talking about Krishna. We gopis of Vrindavan do not want to make any more friendships with this blackish boy, Shyama Sundara. But we do not know how we shall be able to give up remembering and talking about Krishna's activities. Prabhupada now explains some of this inner philosophy. Since Krishna is absolute, his so-called unkind activities are as relishable as his so-called kind activities. Therefore, saintly persons and great devotees like the gopis cannot give up Krishna in any circumstance. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya prayed, Ashlishyava padaratang pinashtumam adarshanan marmahatang kurotuva vyathatadva vididhatu lampato mat prananatas tusa eva napadaha. Lord Chaitanya prayed in his final Shikshashtakam, My dear Krishna, you are free and independent in all respects. So you can either embrace me or crush me under your feet, whatever you like. You may make me broken-hearted by not letting me see you throughout my whole life. But nevertheless, still, you are always my only object of love. Srimati Radharani continued to speak to the bumblebee. It is my opinion, no one should hear about Krishna because as soon as a drop of the nectar of Krishna's transcendental activities is poured into the ear, one immediately rises above the duality of attraction and rejection on the material plane. And being completely freed from the contamination of material attachment, one gives up attachment for this material world, including family, home, wife, children, and everything else materially dear to every person. Thus, being deprived of all material acquisitions, one makes one's relatives and oneself unhappy. And then one wanders in search of Krishna, either as a human being or in some other species of life, even as a bird, and voluntarily accepts the profession of a mendicant. It is very difficult to actually understand Krishna, his name, his qualities, his form, his pastimes, his paraphernalia, his entourage. And so, my dear Bumblebee, please do not talk any more about Krishna. It is better to talk about something else. We are already doomed, just like the black-spotted she-deer in the forest, who are enchanted by the sweet musical vibration of the hunter. In the same way, we have been enchanted by the sweet words of Krishna, and by thinking of the rays of his toenails again and again, we are only becoming more and more greedy for Krishna's association. I therefore request you, O Bumblebee, not to talk any more about Krishna. Prabhupada now explains. These talks of Radharani with the bumblebee messenger, including her accusing Krishna in so many ways, and at the same time expressing her inability to give up talking about Krishna, are signs of the topmost transcendental ecstasy known as Mahabhav. The ecstatic Mahabhav manifestation is possible only in the person of Radharani and her associates. Great acharyas like Srila Rupa Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur have analyzed the Mahabhava speeches of Radharani and described their different varieties, such as Udgurna or bewilderment, and Jalpa, Pratijalpa, or talking in different ways. These are the signs of Ujvala Ras, or the brightest jewel of love of Godhead. So we will continue because we're not done with this pastime. So make sure you come next week, because we're going to hear next week more from Radharani, and we're also going to hear the actual message that Krishna composed that he wanted Uddhava to read to the gopis to solace them. So make sure you attend next week without fail. I will now end the program with my insurance policy of Nrsinga prayers. Namaste Narasimhaya Prahlad Aklad Dayane Hiranya Kashi Purvakshaha Shilatanka Nakalaye Ito Nrsinga Parato Nrsingho Yato Yato Yantato Nrsingha Bahir Nrsingho Hridaye Nrsingho Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Nrsingham Adim Sharanang Prapadye Tavakara Kamala Varenakam Adbhuta Sringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringam Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadish Jai Jagadish Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Om Tat Sat